Welcome to the Off the Beaten Career Path podcast. I'm your host, Katie Myers. Here you will find the inspiration, strategies, and tactics needed to reach the next level and beyond in your small business and career. Thanks for joining us, and get ready to put these ideas to work for you. Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Katie Myers, and today we have a special guest. Her name is Jenny Revels. I've had the pleasure of knowing Jenny now for a couple of years. She is a leadership and personal growth coach with her business, Revels Consulting and Coaching. Her background is in HR and management, and I am super excited to hear her story. So welcome to the podcast, Jenny.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you have a super interesting career story. So first I want to go over kind of where you came from, what led you to starting your business, and then I think it'll be super interesting to talk about some of the changes that you're going through right now in your business and how you're trying to rebrand. So you had the normal corporate career at the beginning. So could you tell me about how you got started in HR and what your experiences were for the first part of your career before going out on your own?
Sure. Yeah. I, much like many others, decided to go to college and do my thing. And I thought I loved accounting. I thought I loved psychology. I was intrigued by both of those, which are very different. Didn't know anything about HR until I got to UW-Whitewater and started my business college career. And just was like, oh, that's like perfect for me. So I can use some of my business skills and my numbers strengths and my people strengths and tie it all together into the business model. So I'm kind of an oddball in that I feel like I was meant to do what I went to school for, which now that I've been in the world of HR and worked and interviewed lots of people for lots of different jobs, not many people have that luxury. They usually go to school, don't know what the heck they're going to do, end up with some degree that they never end up using. And it makes me sad because, especially now with the cost of schooling, it's just not worth it to throw all that money away if you don't know exactly where you're going. So I ended up in an HR path. I worked for a great family-owned business and climbed my way through different facets of HR while I was there. I had a great mentor while I was there. Just really learned a lot about the industry I was in, which was the media industry, radio, newspapers, internet. All of that was new as I was there. So we went through lots of change during the time I was there, which was exciting and scary at the same time, but it taught me a lot about how to morph and move and make adjustments based on skill sets and talents and really just getting to know the people and what they wanted. So that's 18 years I was at the same company. My husband had the luxury of retiring very young, kind of forcefully, unfortunately. His job was stressful. He worked 70 plus hours a week sometimes, and we had kids at the time that were small, and he almost killed himself working there. Almost had a heart attack. His blood pressure was so high, and I was like, you need to get out of this. And we were fortunate that he worked for a great company that had a great employee stock ownership program that allowed him to retire 12 years ago, so when he was 40. And that sort of forced me to continue working, for the insurance or whatever reason I thought I had to keep working. And it was like, no, I don't really need to do this. Like, let's figure out a way to make this happen so that I can spend just as much time with the kids as you are. So that was 8 years ago. I started my business. I was fairly well connected in the community. So I was able to just quickly take on some small business clients, some nonprofits, and just helping them with their leadership, management, HR related projects or different things that came my way. So it's been a wonderful 8 years, and I have had the luxury of starting to say no to more things that I don't enjoy. So probably about right around COVID, that really rocked my business. I was so used to networking and getting out there that way that it was like, oh, now what? I can't get out there as much. People were more in sort of crisis mode and not able to be as proactive with things. They had to really get reactive. So I was like, do I even want to keep doing this? Never been much of a marketer, don't really want to start. But I worked with a coach, and she said one thing to me during the time frame we worked together that was extremely enlightening. And it was, what's your why? Why do you do what you do? And it's always been about helping people and helping people do things better and connect better with their teams, which I still love doing. But sometimes, her biggest question was, what about you? What about you? Why are you doing it for you? And it's like, oh, good question. So it made me kind of take a different look at things and say, okay, what do I really, what really means a lot to me personally? And then how am I going to morph that into my business? So travel and things like that are really important to me, and connecting on a deeper level with people is important to me, and empowering women has always been something important to me, just because I know how tough it is to be a woman in leadership in the workplace. I feel like I've been pretty resilient and tough in a lot of ways, but it's harder for some to kind of rock through those barriers. And I feel like there's a bigger calling for me to kind of help women in leadership in some way, in whatever way that looks. I'm still kind of figuring that out, but retreats, workshops is kind of where I'm going to start. And then maybe some coaching programs for women. We'll see where it goes. I mean, I'm still working with small business owners. I'm still helping leaders where I'm feeling called to do that, or helping them hire, their best fit key players on their team.
Oh, that's really interesting. So because we're friends and I've known you for a couple of years, I know that you're very much in this transition phase with your business. So one of the things that you said that I found really interesting is you said that now 8 years into your business, you can kind of focus more on the things that you like. So take me back to when you started your business, because I know when we all start out a business, we try to be everything to everyone and figure out what your niche is, what you're good at, what you like doing, what the market wants. So take me back to 8 years ago when you started. What was your vision for the business then? And I know it's changed now, but can you talk a little bit about what you really learned in those first few years about what it was like to own this type of business?
Yeah, what I've learned is that not everyone knows what HR is or does. So when you use that word HR, it's like either people get really cringy and like, ugh, they've had bad experiences, or they think right away about compliance and laws and policies and procedures and, can you write me a handbook? And, I can, because I know all that stuff. I know all the laws. I know what I need to know, but that's not really what I love about HR. What I love about HR is the people part of HR, and that is really connecting with people, getting to know them, not just on a professional level, but on an intimate, personal level, to make sure that they enjoy what they're doing. I mean, I feel so passionate about making sure people are on the right path, and so many are not, that's what lights me up, is helping people kind of navigate that and figure that out and determine how can you get to that place where you really want to be, what things do you really love? And I don't think a lot of people have been exposed to enough to know what they love. So I try to connect people to those resources and those tools, even within a client business that I'm working with. Sometimes there's friction on a team or conflict, and sometimes it's just because people are not happy. People are not happy where they're at. And even though letting people go is hard, sometimes it's a win-win sometimes for people, and I think if you frame it like, how can we work this out? How can we, make things better? Obviously, that's the first goal, is to try to do that. But ultimately, if the leader's vision and the team's vision, or each individual on the team's vision, is not aligning, there might need to be a change that has to happen. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the business owner or leader can make that a better transition, to make it, you can still be caring and empathetic and help that person to their next move, so, how can we prepare you for where you really want to go? What can we do internally? What can we do externally to kind of expose you to those things? I think that just builds loyalty on multiple levels, and, ultimately makes the business owner happier too, because they're not feeling as terrible about the situations.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. And I know in my business, one thing that I've thought a lot about is that the working culture is different than it was for our parents. People aren't going to come and work for me for 40 years. I mean, if they want to, great, but that's not how people are working and viewing careers now like they were years ago. So I tell everyone I hire, like, I don't care if your goal is to stick with being an insurance agent or if it's to be a photographer or a dolphin trainer, like, let's get you the experience that you need while in the context of my business while you're here, so that you can get the skills you need to move on to the next role if that's what you want. If that's not what you want, great, we'll figure out how to help you grow here. But I also think you make a great point about sometimes letting someone go is the best thing for them. And it's a hard thing to do as a leader, but that's a skill that you have to learn how to sell somebody that them not working for you is probably the best for both of you. And it's a lonely place to be at the top. So I think that the leadership coaching is really important.
I was just going to say, yeah, it's just about having the conversation in the right way. And sometimes that's what I help navigate, leaders through is it's just having somebody to bounce that off of. It's hard to think about it in the moment, and being sort of a third party, neutral party looking from the outside in, it's easier for me to see the bigger vision and picture and sort of narrow it down to, the right conversation to have. So yeah, I do that a lot, and I help people also just see how are we doing, pulse check. Let's see how we're doing as a business. And sometimes going in as an outsider and talking to each team member individually, I just have a different perspective, and I can have those intimate conversations with each individual that might help them say something out loud to me that they may not feel as comfortable with saying to their leader, and, bringing that all together in a way that hopefully becomes a, win-win for the whole team. So.
Yeah. One of the things you did for me is I had hired you a while back to do a DISC assessment workshop with my team. And I want to talk a little bit about that because we found a lot of value in that. So can you tell our listeners that aren't familiar with the DISC assessment what that is and why a leader would want to use that with their team?
Yeah, I think of DISC and so many other assessments are out there as kind of a great starting point or conversation starter for the team. I'll be real honest, I don't always totally believe in assessment tools because I've seen them not be perfectly accurate. And, my little perfectionist part of me is like, these aren't right. But I've learned that sometimes you just need somewhere to start. Like, how are we all the same? How are we all different? And how can we lean on each other in a way that is a positive thing for both of us instead of getting annoyed with each other for our differences? Let's find a way to utilize each other for our differences and capitalize on those differences, because a lot of times, just because you aren't alike, you may not mesh as well as you might with someone else that you have similar traits with, but that's the beauty of it. Then there's those people that are really good at the details versus those people that are just really good at the getting out there and talking. And, how can you complement each other? How can you help each other out? How can you lean on each other? And just getting that conversation out there as far as, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That's why we butt heads on certain things. It kind of makes you start saying it out loud and being okay with it instead of feeling icky about it.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that came out in our session that we have used since then that's been really useful is one of my newer employees at the time had said that she really loves doing like boring, mundane tasks. And I was like, well, I really hate doing boring, mundane tasks, but would try to like find ways to get that off her plate because I just assumed that everybody hates doing boring things. But when she said she liked it, like we just gave her all the boring things to do. She's happy, I'm happy, but that wouldn't have come out unless we had that conversation.
Right. That's what I love about, the DISC. So yeah, there's lots of tools out there. There's, some other ones that I've been kind of playing around with, and yeah, they all have value in different ways.
Yeah. And so what I've seen you doing also in the last, year or so with your business is I know you're moving more into this leadership coaching rather than just doing the HR consulting as you have been in the past. So with that leadership coaching, what has been the most surprising and exciting thing for you about that as you've been making this transition to more about the leadership, personal development, and helping people grow?
I think the biggest shift for me, because I've gone through some of my own personal growth coaching and, this is why I am the way I am type of thing. There's just different limiting beliefs that you might have that you don't even think of as I had a lot of anxiety and control issues, with my kids or with just getting things done. And it's like, that's part of some inner healing I need to do. So I've gone through some healing of my own, things that have happened in my life that I just kind of powered through, and I was resilient, and I feel like I'm fine. Nothing's wrong here, but ultimately didn't really heal those wounds. And so I think there's a lot of that happening in a lot of people, and that's why they react the way they do to certain things, or that's maybe why they do. Like perfectionism is probably one of my things that, I'm harder on myself than anybody. And I think a lot of us are, especially as women. And then people pleasing, those are all coping mechanisms that I didn't realize were coping mechanisms. And now that I've kind of worked through some of that inner emotional work, it's really helped me kind of let some of that go. And so I feel like there's just opportunity to help others in that way. I haven't quite figured out if it's, helping, like I said, women that are in leadership roles. I feel like I am them, so I can speak to them. If I would have known some of the things I know now, if I would have known these things in my 30s, I feel like, dang, I could have gotten through things a lot differently and maybe had more confidence in myself in certain ways. And so just helping people kind of build their confidence as a leader is just something I feel passionate about. Or does that look like going into a business and helping the team, maybe helping all the players on the team with some of that personal growth? I don't think businesses offer that so much. HR people in general are so busy right now. I know I'm kind of glad I'm not in the thick of corporate HR anymore. I mean, they are under so much stress getting all these new laws, new things are always coming their way that just make things sometimes more challenging and difficult and get in the way of the people part of what they do. So they end up getting bogged down with paperwork and goals that they have to help achieve. So if they don't have time to spend the time with their actual employees and see what's going on in their life and how they can be supportive of that, maybe that's an area I could be helpful, is to coach people in that way within a workplace. So I'm still kind of trying to navigate where I'm going with my business, but I've been really, really working on human design and gene codes lately and for myself. And that is another area that I think is so powerful. It's like the blueprint that you were born with, which is something I would have probably rolled my eyes at about 10 years ago. But now that I've looked at my own and looked at my family's, I'm like, oh my gosh, this stuff is like really spot on and powerful and helps you really accept who you are and say, oh, this makes sense now. Like, this is why I am the way I am, and I should embrace that. So helping others kind of navigate that is kind of another area I'm thinking about doing, especially with retreats and workshops and things like that.
Oh, for sure. And I want to get to that in just a minute. But before, I want to back up because you said something that I think was really interesting. You talked about, like healing from your trauma and people pleasing and all of these things. And I know that for me, I've worked with business coaches in the past. And especially, I think this is something that women tend to deal with or put more pressure on themselves. Some of my conversations with my business coach have been around like, Katie, you need to hire a cleaning lady. You can't, or another thing that was really, really hard for me that I did within the past couple of years is I quit cooking for my kids, which makes me sound like a terrible mother. But what that means is I've always enjoyed cooking. I'm very cheap also. So I've always enjoyed like cooking from scratch because that's more cost effective. But I had to switch in the past couple of years because I just don't have the capacity as my business has grown. So we're eating a lot of the pre-made meals from Costco. And you know what? It's fine. I learned to be okay with it, but that was part of something I need to heal from, that I'm like not this terrible mother if my kids aren't eating a nutritiously prepared meal. It is nutritious and it's prepared, just not by me. So,
right.
So I think there's a lot to that. And I think a lot of women in leadership need that person to lean on to say, it's okay. You can get past that because it's hard because we want to be everything to everyone.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And I think, just because I've been there, I've done that. I've parented through working in a corporate world and 2-parent working household and all the things. You think you're not great at being the best mom. You're not great at being the best employee. You're trying to do it all for everybody. And you yourself you're like last on the list usually. So I think I've always been pretty good about setting my boundaries. And so I've helped others with that over the years, just, help them feel okay with that. But yeah, it's always a struggle, and it's always just, sometimes you just need that extra support and guidance.
Yeah. So tell me, so because I do know you, I know that you are not typically the person that I would have expected to get really into human design and gene keys and all of those things, Miss Corporate background. But I want to hear, like, how did you first hear about it? And at what point did you decide, hey, this is something I think I want to incorporate in my business and bring in to help me help more people?
Yeah, I mean, I had heard about human design here and there through different coaches I had worked with. What's your human design? And I'm like, I don't know. What is that? I just kind of brushed it off. And then someone ran the report for me one time, based on your birth date and birth time. And it's just this goofy looking graph with a bunch of numbers on it. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? There's only like 4 descriptors on it that kind of tells you what the report really means. And a lot of people I don't think even really totally understand the depth of what these reports. So again, I was like, okay, this is kind of doesn't help me much because I don't really get it. But I kept hearing it enough, and I think it's becoming more, talked about. I hear other coaches using it within their work, and I'm like, maybe I need to learn more about this just to know what's going on here. The luxury my husband and I have is now that we're empty nesters on top of things, we can travel even more. And we spent the whole month of January in Arizona. And this free masterclass popped up on my screen for human design. I was like, oh, free. And it's a whole class. Now I can learn more about this. I've always been like, I got to know everything about everything before I really dive into it. So yeah, I took this masterclass with Julie Ciardi. She's another coach, a marketing coach. And, her goal was to help people sell themselves better, which I can also use help with, the marketing side of things, using their human design. So I was like, oh, I took the class. I was like so fascinated by all the things I was learning about myself that made sense. And I was like, okay, this is solid. Yeah, this could be very helpful for people. And so right away, instead of thinking about using it for my marketing, I was right away thinking, how can I help others, to use this to just get to know themselves better and understand their shadow sides and understand, what things to focus on sort of overcoming, because I think we all, like I said, have limiting beliefs and limiting things that hold us back. But this like puts it in black and white for you. And, there's the books, if you study the specific gene codes that are assigned to you that you were meant to learn, it's like my 2 biggest shadows for my life's work and my evolution are confusion and doubt. And those are like my 2 biggest. I'm always like, should I do this? And then I doubt myself, and then I get confused. But if I use my gift of inquiry and my gift of imagination, which I do feel like those are 2 of my gifts, when I'm in that high frequency state and I'm using those gifts, I like come up with so many ideas. I'm ready to roll. So I feel like, and that's just 2 of the core 4 components. So 4 of your gene codes make up 70% of who you are. So that those are on my conscious side. And then on my unconscious side, there's 2 other ones I won't get into too much depth, but it's just fascinating. And then when you go down there's all your centers, whether they're open or closed, and mine happen to all be open where my core 4 are, which means I'm easily influenced by the outside world, which is why it's easy for me to get derailed, to feel doubt, even more doubt when I don't get the reassurances from others that I feel like I need. So it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's fascinating. And I think the more knowledge you have about it, the more awareness you have about it, the more you can really hone in on, where to go with that information and how can you capitalize on the strengths that come with that. So yeah, I've just been fascinated by it.
Well, I just want to say that you articulated that so beautifully. As someone who has watched you for a couple of years kind of make this transition, I've heard you explain it a few different times. That is the most beautifully I've seen you articulate it. And I think it's so interesting. I think that you are so uniquely qualified to help more women step into that through their business, because I think it's been a lot of work for you to do that in your own business, but you've done the work and you can show people how to do it.
Right. That's what I'm hoping, is that I can help somebody along the way, and then just helping busy business owners and leaders get out of their business. That's why I think the retreats really intrigue me. I think getting people out of their business into more of the stillness and quiet. I have had the luxury of time because of my situation. I mean, I'm blessed, like I said, because my husband is in this situation where, my business is kind of extra. So I've had the time to really get still with myself and, do a lot of the meditations, do a lot of the things that have really helped me into my inner self, more so than feeling like all these distractions from the outside. And I just don't think enough women have that time to do that. So if I can create spaces for them to do that and learn more about themselves and figure out their next move, figure out their next vision, that's kind of where I'm thinking of heading with some of it.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, especially as a small business owner. You are never off. It is I'm a small business owner. I'll be at the office for 10 or 12 hours a day, and then I'm still at the office for the rest of the time at the evening because it's on my phone. It's very hard to turn it off as a small business owner. So I think you're definitely onto something there with the retreats. Taking that time away is so important, especially when you are running a chaotic small business, to figure out how to be strategic with it and strategic with yourself, and give yourself the downtime to be able to recuperate and make the best decisions, so you're not making decisions while you're burned out and exhausted.
Right. Everybody gets caught in that hustle of that day-to-day crazy, and it's just easy to lose sight of why are we doing this, and what is our end goal with this, and how am I fulfilling my real purpose and passion, and taking that time to just live life in a way that's more meaningful. So
I want to talk about one more thing. So and because I've watched you do this, and it's very interesting for me, because you do come from that very corporate background. That is what you've been doing in our very small community for a long time. A lot of people know you, and you're stepping into this new portion of your business that's a little unheard of, a little different from what you've been doing, a little more woo-woo. What have you done to be confident in that? Because I know that's not an easy transition to make.
I think I'm just being true to myself, first and foremost. I'm just kind of doing what I want to do with passion. And if anybody wants to follow along, great. If not, I'll just find something else to move on to. That's probably the biggest thing, is being true to myself instead of trying to fit that mold that everybody expects of me in my corporate HR background. I think that doing something unheard of is actually in my design. And I'm also a 6'2", which means I'm supposed to flourish and be a role model after age 50. And ironically, I'm turning 50 this year. So
I'll have to figure out what stage I'm at. And maybe I can relax a little if I'm supposed to flourish after 50.
So I'm just hoping it just happens. We'll see. I'm trying to go with the flow more, with ease, and not so much structure, and not so much like I have to do it this way and I have to do it the right way. And yeah, I'm just kind of rolling with it. So I'm starting with a workshop on June 6th in Milton at the Timber Hill Winery. I'm doing a Hustle to Balance workshop for high achieving women, leaders, business owners, and that'll be a great sort of see if anybody comes sort of test. I've already had some pretty good response to it, as far as people saying, oh, that I really need that. So doing breakout sessions and networking opportunities, having people share with each other what they're doing for self-care, introducing people to this human design stuff a little bit, and also providing a workbook that can help you help get you started on the path of uncovering, what is my purpose and passion? I don't think people have sit down and think about that very much, but I have a whole questionnaire booklet that can help people sort of start that process.
Yeah. I remember before I started my business, I thought a lot about my purpose, my passion, my mission, my vision, all of that. But after a couple of years in it with your feet to the fire and it's been nothing but chaos, sometimes you need to step back and recalibrate and see how things have changed and how you've changed and grown to recalibrate that in your business.
Right.
I do want to touch on another thing that I think is super interesting about you. I know you guys travel a lot. Your husband has this lifestyle where he's been retired for many years. And you mentioned earlier that you decided to start this business because you also wanted that flexibility and time with your family. So what advice do you have for people who are launching a business? That part of the reason they want to launch is because they want that freedom and flexibility. What have you done to set your business up in a way that it's easy for you to travel and spend a month in Arizona?
Yeah, well, like I said, I am grateful that the way my business is set up, I don't have specific financial goals in mind, which I know a lot of business owners do. So be prepared for that, because it's not as easy as it seems. If you do have very specific financial goals in mind, the hustle will be even harder at the beginning, at least. But if you zone in on your zone of genius and figure out some platforms and structure around that, I think anybody can flourish. A lot of business has just come my way through word of mouth, and I've been fortunate that way. And I was like, if it's coming this much through word of mouth, I'm like nervous about putting it out there even more. But as one of my coaches said, you still can say no to the things that don't make sense to you. And my people pleasing part of me has a hard time with that. So that's probably my other reason why I kind of held back. But yeah, I think it's just being mindful and using coaches and using others along the way to help you, because you aren't going to have all the answers. And there's just facets of your business that you're going to try to do yourself. I learned that as well. Like, I thought I have a business background. I can do it all. But, I've realized quickly, like, the creative and the graphic stuff, I don't even enjoy doing it. So I outsource that. I outsource some of the things that don't come naturally to me and don't light me up. So just keep that in mind as you're starting things.
And you say that like it's a really simple statement, but it's a hard thing to do, because you want to think like, yeah, I can be like really good in Canva and do all these things, because I'm the same way and I can't. I've just learned, okay, this is not your zone of genius. Just let somebody do it who it is theirs, because I'm just going to waste my time and get frustrated and upset.
Right. And it takes you away from the things you're great at. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners, Jenny? We'll put your links in the show notes and everything coming up with your workshop. Anything else you'd like to share and make sure people know where to find you, where to follow you?
I have the Shine Bright in Work and Life. There's a Facebook page out there that I created that inspire people to really think about how they can, focus on how to align their work and their life together, instead of feeling like, they have to be two separate lives. Like, if you set things up properly, your work life, should be just another piece of your family, another piece of your life that you enjoy. But also, so I've been putting things out there about a lot of different healing modalities and things that I didn't know about. It's just kind of a good way to get some insights about things that you might not have known about. And then I started a Women with Vision leadership community private group Facebook page. So if there's any women out there that are in leadership that want to have a safe place to ask questions or, bounce things off of one another, get advice from me on anything, I feel like that's just kind of a give back way for me to give my insights to women that are in those trenches right now. And then LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn as well. So some of my information is out there as well.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jenny. And I wish you the best in all of your future endeavors.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Off the Beaten Career Path podcast is a Lit Path Studios production and is produced by Jamie Gale and Katie Myers. Music is by Sasha Gray and Pond 5. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave us a review and share it to your social media. Remember, your career path is up to you to create. Keep exploring, keep pushing boundaries, and keep blazing your own trail.